Adaab.
If you've ever visited Pakistan or have met a Pakistani anywhere in the world, you'd know we don't speak like that. For some reason, cinema outside of Pakistan is convinced that we have kohl-lined eyes and greet each other with Adaab. Adaab. Newsflash, we're funny people. Cinema, however, has a culture of misrepresenting Muslims, especially Pakistanis.
Remember the 90s classic Ghulam Mustafa, where Nanapatekar plays the role of a Muslim protagonist?
Or Homeland's Carrie Mathison surrounded by burqa-clad women in this poster.
Even the soldier in Salman Khan's Bajrangi Bhaijan couldn't stop saying, janaab.
जनाब बिल्कुल मेंटल है ये.
Amazingly, stereotypical portrayal of Muslims in movies is not just limited to Bollywood. For example, a study by USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative that reviewed 200 top-grossing movies from the US, UK, Australia and New Zealand released between 2017 and 2019 shows that only 1.6% of the speaking characters in these movies were Muslims.
So the Muslims are not only portrayed in stereotypical roles, but are also underrepresented.
This really makes us wonder if the creators of these shows and movies do any research at all. It also brings up a question: is this misrepresentation by design?
That they speak like Aap Janaab. And more than that, you have to understand that I was watching Mission Majnu, and the reason I couldn't watch it more than 20 minutes was that fine, tell Muslims are Aap Janaab, we live on dargahs, we sleep on shrines, do whatever you want to do, we wear shalwar kameez all the time. And you know, the Zarband is our national symbol, however you want to go about it. But you know, when I saw that one thing in the film, the first 20 minutes was so idiotic and sheerly stupid, I realized that they are doing it on purpose. Because there's a scene in which a Pakistani military brigadier randomly breaks into a conversation about nuclear assets with his tailor's assistant. Which brigadier in the world does that? And if, you know, there are two possibilities of it. Either it's the producer's reflection of how an Indian brigadier would react in such a situation. If that's the case, it's just hilarious. And if they feel that, you know, the Pakistani armed forces and the Pakistani intelligentsia are so stupid, then I don't need to defend any of them. I mean, I get where they say, okay, the military controls everything, but this was just sheerly stupid. And that's where you realize that they are essentially creating a caricature of Muslims that thrives, that aids, that catalyzes the anti-Muslim, pro-Brahmin Hindu sentiment in India. And the Bollywood establishment, which was once known for pluralistic films, for inviting cricketers, for socializing with them, for sharing stages with Pakistani actors and performers, are clearly caving into this pressure, and I don't think they have a choice.
Stereotype sells, and people don't want to break the mold or experiment, that's all. But I think many filmmakers, the ones who make more commercial masala cinema as we call it, don't think that public will accept agar hum stereotypical nahi dikhayenge. They want to stick to that image that this is it, this is how the streets look like, this is how people look like. But there are films which have not shown it in this manner, and they have not done very well, to be very honest. Like there was a film last year or last to last year called Sardar Ka Grandson, which had a small sequence set in Pakistan. It did not show that stereotypical point of view, because of course it was also not trying to show them in a bad light. It was a very positive thing. But I think when you have to show a hero and a villain or a negative character, stereotype and drama is always better, because public likes extremes. I think the stereotype only works as long as it is part of the story. I think the biggest example right now is a film like Pathaan. It has Deepika Padukone playing a Pakistani character, and her entry is in a bikini. I mean, that is as far from a depiction of any Muslim character or any Pakistani character in Indian cinema. So I think if the director, writer thinks that showing them in that stereotypical fashion is useful for the story, they do it. Otherwise, they don't. That's the basic thing of it. And it all boils down to what they feel the audience will like. That's all. If the audience tomorrow tells them that no, we want a more realistic portrayal, maybe more filmmakers will do that.
The Hindi language cinema, just like its counterpart in Pakistan, we're working essentially using the same language. We're people of the same color, people of the same culture. But at the same time, there's a line that needs to be drawn. And in India, that line has always been drawn in the Islamicate cinema, what the formal term is Islamicate cinema. Islamicate cinema would essentially be the cinema that the cinematic imagination or reimagination of the Muslim life. It could be the Muslim way of life, Muslim ethos, Muslim culture. It's basically looking at that life through the cinema's lens. And you find in the earlier films, obviously, you do find partition and the Muslim identity not being directly sort of targeted in Bollywood, but you slowly and gradually, as Hindi cinema reaches its peak, you see films like Amar Akbar Anthony, where Qawwali, for example, something which is devotionally Muslim, not just romantically Muslim, is linked to romance and a girl behind a parda, that Qawwali parda hai parda, parde ke piche parda nashi hai. And it's from Amar Akbar Anthony, a brilliant film that came out in the 70s, and a film that was essentially about the three identities, Amar Akbar Anthony. So we've seen that somehow there's a exoticization, which isn't really bad, but it's bad when you are being, when you're on YouTube and someone says, oh, your accent is so nice, your accent is so crisp, your accent is so sexy, are you a Pakistani? So one angle is that, which we can call as aesthetic typecasting. But on the other hand, you see with time, Muslims changing in Bollywood, especially in the last few years. I mean, it was reflected in the post-Babri Masjid cinema in Bollywood, but no one realized that post-Babri Masjid, so much will change in Indian politics so soon and so radically that there will come a time when you will have someone like Ranveer Singh in a film, Padmavat, and its first 15-20 minutes are all about rashy, vulgar, greedy, savage Muslims, and then it's all about romance. No one would have thought that Sanjay Leela Bhansali would go down that route. No one would have thought that Pathan would receive the kind of backlash it did. And all of it is interlinked. You might say that, Pathan is there sort of targeting a Muslim superstar there, but all of it is interlinked with each other. That as soon as you started demonizing Muslims in the cultural imagination, you see Muslims being demonized in mainstream cinema, in mainstream Hindi cinema. Yes, you have exceptions like Gully Boy, you have exceptions like Secret Superstar, but at the same time, it's either a rags to riches story that see all that they have fought through, in which you also see a very soft side of Muslim identity, like they have to surpass not just caste but also ghettoization and getting out of the neighborhood and a lot of stereotyping on their own. But when we look at Bollywood today especially, and Muslim representation in there, you will see the Hindutva narrative being pushed more forcibly than ever.
उनके दिमाग में यही है कि अगर मुसलमान है तो पान खाता होगा, अगर मुसलमान है तो पांच वक्त की नमाज पढ़ता होगा, अगर मुसलमान है तो सुरमा काजल लगाता होगा, अगर मुसलमान है तो उसके गले में एक रुमाल होगा और वो हर बात में जो है वो जनाब और जो है बरखुरदार और इस किस्म के अल्फाज यूज करेगा जो पाकिस्तान में इस्तेमाल ही नहीं होते हैं. तो अब उनका जो ये स्टीरियोटाइप है इसको तोड़ने की जरूरत तो है, लेकिन अब वो खुद ही तोड़ना नहीं चाह रहे.
Now the problem here is when you have a right-wing extreme party leading the government in India, since films, arts, entertainment, sports are a symbolic manifestation of the nation and what it means to be a nation, which is why they are the ones that get banned first in a political conflict, you also have to understand that they matter the most, and what sort of image do they present matters the most. And somehow, whether you can say that there are certain media cells in India, or you can say that the prime of Bollywood or the Bollywood elite is just so intimidated by the Modi establishment that they are retorting to caricatures of the Muslim imagination that essentially only exist in the heads of the Hindutva masterminds. India, we are criticizing Bollywood for stereotyping. Our hands are equally dirty. I mean, we just need to look back at the history of Lollywood, and it's peppered with anti-Hindu sentiment. It's peppered with Shan schooling Hindus about Islam, almost preaching Islam on screen. And you have Shafkat Cheema playing the raw agent, or you also have Misha Shafi in Bar playing the raw agent, and her and Shamoon Ismail doing this tango of victory before they do a big conspiracy, and Shan comes and fails that conspiracy. So we have our own fair share of stereotypes that we have manufactured over time. The only thing that memers and I get out of it is that our understanding in pop culture of an Indian agent is that of a guy who's supposedly not beautiful by conventional standard. Although the Misha Shafi bit proves it wrong, but then she was a Pakistani person helping them out. But at the same time, I do feel that we have a more villainous, or more, you can say, a more ugly caricature of a raw agent as compared to them showing us as represented by Katrina Kaif and Deepika Padukone. But jokes aside, stereotyping begs for a larger discussion. While we can say that, the British stereotype, the Scottish, the Irish and Pakistani stereotype, Indian stereotypes, Pakistanis and Muslims, and Hollywood stereotypes, Muslims and people from the Middle East, the question eventually is that apart from this propaganda, stereotype is born out of a sheer laziness and a lack of creativity. Stereotyping is also a shortcut in storytelling. That when you don't know enough about the person you are representing on screen, you just take shortcuts and easy crash caricatures that help you meet the formulaic need, but not really do justice to the identity that you're trying to represent. We see that in Pakistan, we see that within Pakistani media, where we see Pashtuns as truck drivers, we see Sindhis as dharels. We can clearly see PTV's history, and even today, our media industry is peppered with a certain Urdu-speaking elitism in it. And all of these things, these are very hegemonic and subaltern exchanges between the dominant ideology and the suppressed ideology. But the artists, the creative producers, the creative industry practitioners can do a lot more if they can research, if they can find people from the margins to represent the margins, if they can find consultants from across the board to represent and check the content for cultural accuracy. And there are enough people doing it. So I hope Bollywood gets out of its intellectual laziness or maybe perpetual propaganda and looks at how Pakistanis really are.
Adaab.